No, this is actually pink. It's showing up as red, but it's pink. I'm the lady in
We
pink
are
today.
live on Facebook, guys. It's Monday Night Meetup. Thank you so much for joining us. And tonight is just going to be one of the most critical trainings, in my opinion, in regards to honoring our emotions. Dr. K is one of our awesome facilitators, and she has been taking us through a deep faith-based drive into honoring our emotions as well as express emotions, giving us additional words to use to express the intensity of an emotion. And what I love so much is that Dr. K continues to teach us that there is no such thing as a good emotion or bad emotion. So when we think of the emotion of anger, a lot of times it's associated with negative traits, and we say that it's a bad emotion, but it's not. Dr. K does an awesome job at explaining that it's really the behavior we choose to express an emotion. The behavior can be good or bad. The behavior can be healthy or unhealthy. The behavior can build or break. And I think that's so critical. Dr. K, during this time, there are so many families at home during quarantine. People are dealing with a lot of range of emotions, uncertainty, stress, fear, and anger is coming out because there are a lot of triggers and a lot of things that people haven't had to face. And so this is so important to me. And I just want to thank you, because when we think about the When Women Heal platform, the mission is to help us to build relationships and build families.
Yeah.
And what you're teaching tonight is giving us tools. So I don't want people to suppress if they're angry or hurt or frustrated. Don't suppress it and then blow up and lash out or storm out or hang the phone, because we're keeping it real. I used to do it, you know? But when you don't know what else to do, you try to just stuff it down, or you try to hold it in, or you try to reach for things that you think is going to make you feel better. But what you're doing is helping us honor it. You're helping us realize different ways to express it. So thank you so much, Dr. K. I know you have a lot to cover, guys. Dr. K is actually going to be showing her screen. She's done a lot of research to break this down. So make sure you are viewing this. And I think you can zoom in with your phone when she puts the slides on camera. So without further ado, thank you so much, Dr. K. And if anyone's watching, if you don't mind sharing this out, I'm sure you've already shared it, Dr. K. If you all can share it out or tag some friends, please do. So Dr. K, thank you so much again. And I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey, good evening, good evening, good evening. And thank you so much, Tira. I just realized I hadn't turned my phone down. And I did share it out and tag some friends, and now they're responding. But I am excited again tonight to talk to you about the emotion of anger. And we're going to do a deep dive into it. And really, I have an objective for this evening. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And let's do this. Let's set this up as a slideshow. Here we go. All right. Everyone should be able to see that. Now, what you've got there is a word cloud because we're doing deep dives into different emotions. Tonight, we're going to talk about the stronghold of anger. And when I did this before, it was emotional healing for spiritual growth, dealing with the stronghold of anger. So that is the title that we're working with tonight. Emotion, and we're going to do a little bit of review from the last couple of nights. I promised I would keep this because I believe that the definitions are key to us communicating properly and fully. We have to all start at the same place to end up at the same destination. So an emotion in general is a conscious mental reaction subjectively experienced as strong feeling, usually directed toward a specific object or event, typically accompanied by physiological and behavioral changes in the body. In case you've ever wanted a definition for the word emotion, this is it. It is a conscious. Emotions don't happen in the subconscious realm typically, because we're generally awake and conscious. Now, we can dream about an emotion, but even in the dream, we're conscious when we are experiencing that emotion in the dream. So it is a conscious mental reaction. Subjectively means that it happens inside the body or inside the person, strong feeling directed toward a specific object or event. And usually emotions are accompanied by physiological and behavioral changes in the body. That goes to the components. There are three parts or three components to all emotions, not just anger, but to all of them. The first component is subjective. That is what the person actually feels. It's what's happening inside of them. Physiological is what's happening in their body. So subjective is what they are feeling. Physiological is how their body is responding. A physiological response in anger would be for your jaws to swell. I remember when we used to be kids and my mom would say, "What, you getting swole now? You getting swole?" Meaning that we were angry, our jaws would get swollen, our teeth would grit, sometimes our fist would clench. It was a physiological response. We might fight back tears. I would get so angry that I would cry. So part of my anger expression was crying. The third, that's the physiological. That's what's happening in the body. Expressive is what other people see and what they encounter as we deal with that anger, as we process it. And sometimes we'll process it by keeping quiet. Other times we'll process it by blowing up. Whichever one, that is the expressive, how we demonstrate or reveal that emotion to others. So those are the three components for all emotions. Now, I have an objective for tonight. Tonight's objective, because when I looked at it, it was a lot of information. And then I thought about it and said, okay, if we're putting out all of this information, what is somebody to do with it? Because information without application is an abomination. If I'm going to give you information, I need to give you a reason or something to do with it. Wisdom is the right and proper application of knowledge. So to give you just knowledge without giving you wisdom is really not a wise thing to do. So the objective for tonight is to shed light on the feeling of anger, giving definitions to its various shades of this emotion so that the one coming into contact with it, either internally or externally, has the proper words to relate to and deal with their experience. So tonight is about definitions. It's about understanding the words and the shadings. And that way, as you begin to delve into this in yourself and in your own home, you have the right words to engage in conversation, both internal conversation and external conversation. My quote at the bottom is, "A problem incorrectly identified cannot be solved." You can't solve any problem until you admit that there's a problem and understand what the problem is. That's the significance and the importance of the definitions and the things that we're going to look at tonight relative to the emotion of anger. As Tiara has already said, anger is neither bad nor good. They serve purposes. It's like money is neither bad nor good. It serves a purpose. A car is neither bad nor good. It serves a purpose. The problem then becomes what you do with it. How do you behave when you get into a particular emotion? That is what is negative. It's the behavior, the expression that can be negative, but the emotion itself is just that. It's an emotion. It's a thing, it's a noun, it has no feelings, it has no judgment in and of itself. It is an emotion. So tonight's goal is to help people begin to give definitions to what they're feeling on the inside, all of the various shades, all of the various reactions. And then as we begin to deal with those definitions and get a hold on them, then we can start to work on how do we express this thing properly? How do we use it so that it then begins to serve us and not damage us? And if you've got any questions and you're able to send the question in the chat, please do so. We'll also give some time toward the latter part of the presentation to answer questions if anybody has any. Now, I love definitions. I've already said that. Here's a definition for anger that I thought I could wrap my head around and work with. Anger defined is a feeling involving a belief or a perception that a person, A person one cares for has intentionally or through neglect been treated without respect, and it is a want or a desire to have that respect reestablished. It's a feeling involving a belief. So emotions are perceptions, they are perceived, that a person one cares for has intentionally or through neglect been treated without respect, and a want or desire to have that respect reestablished. Quite often, the person that we care for is usually the self, but that person can extend to significant others. You can be angry because you think your child was disrespected. Idealized personages. You can be angry because you think your favorite basketball player was disrespected. Or it can be total strangers. There's a TV show on called What Would You Do? And they set up these scenarios where events take place and they watch to see how the people around the event taking place react. One of the events was a young man saying that he was allergic to peanuts. And then when he got up to go to the restroom, his two friends, or three guys sitting at the table, and the two friends discussed putting peanuts on his sundae to see what would happen. So they wanted to see what the response would be of the other people in the cafe to what was happening to this young man. So your anger is the perception that either you've been disrespected or dishonored, someone you love has been disrespected or dishonored, and that person you love can be someone you know or someone you don't know, or a total stranger has been disrespected or dishonored. And you're not satisfied until that discourteous treatment, that unjust treatment, or that offensive treatment has been dealt with, until respect has been reestablished. So it means to redress or to undo the wrong that's done, or the perception of the wrong that's done. Now, I've always heard that anger is tied to hurt. I want to explain an interesting distinction between the two. Anger is tied, some forms of hurt, there's hurt and then there's anger that's tied to hurt. The hurt that anger is tied to is disrespect. So you can be hurt if somebody mispronounces your name and they do it unintentionally. So you may be hurt that they can't pronounce your name correctly, that they didn't get it. You can be hurt by that, but you don't necessarily become angry about it. When that person continues to mispronounce your name and you've corrected them over and over again, and you know that they are capable of saying your name, then you feel disrespected because they're not showing you the respect of pronouncing your name correctly. So that's when the hurt becomes anger. Anger is tied to a sense of disrespect. And the behavior, believe it or not, as negative as the behaviors can be, is actually an effort to regain that respect or to reestablish that respect and to deal with the fact that you have been disrespected. So hurt is a totally separate emotion and it doesn't have to do with disrespect. But anger is tied to disrespect. Now, here's the emotion word wheel. I love this thing. I love it because it gives us the shades of the main emotion. The foundation emotion that we're dealing with is anger. So under angry, you've got a first tier of emotions: let down, humiliated, bitter, mad, aggressive, frustrated, distant, critical. Look at those. Aren't those great words? So now instead of just saying I'm angry when somebody doesn't show up on time to take you to the place that you're supposed to be, you can say I'm let down. You can say I'm bitter. You can say I'm frustrated. You can become distant. You can sit in the car and not talk to them. You can become critical. You can rag on their driving skills. Here's a third tier. This is another level. Betrayed, resentful, disrespected. Remember, we talked about that. Ridiculed, indignant, violated, furious, jealous, provoked, hostile, infuriated, annoyed, withdrawn, numb. How many of you have had something happen to you and you were just numb? You didn't even know what to feel. Well, at the base of that numbness is anger. Skeptical, you don't believe what they're saying. Dismissive, you just send it away. Whoever it is, you don't even take them seriously. Look at all of those great words. Instead of just saying, I'm angry, you can tell somebody they provoked you. They did something that made you respond. Jealous, furious. I love those words, violated. So the next time you're dealing with being angry and you're trying to express your anger to someone, you've got a group of words here that will give them a better understanding of what it is that you are experiencing. And as they understand what you are truly experiencing, they can begin to empathize with you. They can understand the level of damage that they did because of the shadings of the words that you're choosing. So this emotion word wheel, you can Google it. I'll give one to Tierra that we can upload to the website, because this one I Googled and it's the one that I use because it's big and easy to read. But now with all of these different shades, you don't have to just say I'm angry and have 16 different responses. So I'm angry at my son for spilling the milk, and I'm angry at somebody for cutting me off on the freeway. Now, when my son spills the milk, I'm not going to cuss him out. And we're good Christians, not supposed to do that. But if somebody cuts me off on the freeway, they may get a few choice words that my son won't get. So the truth is, I may be furious at the person who cuts me off on the freeway. I may be frustrated with my young son while he is spilling milk. Yes, you can get a copy of the word though. Okay. So does that make sense? So the goal tonight is to give you the wording so that you can deal with your emotions properly. You can express them with words. A lot of times we move to actions because we don't have words. So this is to give you words. Now, there are 6 dimensions of anger expression, and they are called bipolar. I love it. They're called the 6 bipolar dimensions of expression. You know, a pole has 2 ends. So you can express your anger in 6 different bipolar formats, for lack of a better phrase. The first direction is reflection versus deflection. It's who do you hurt in return? Reflection, if you are a reflective anger type person, the source of the provocation or the offender is repaid measure for measure. You're an eye for an eye kind of person. But if you are a deflection, if you are a deflector, someone else gets the root of your anger, or they get the expression of your anger. It's often called the kick the cat syndrome. A man is at work, his boss upsets him by telling him he has to work on Saturday when he had plans to go fishing with his buddies. And because he can't blow up at his boss, he goes home and blows up at his wife. He goes home and blows up at his kids. He goes home and he kicks the cat. Deflection means you express that anger out to anything other than the one who really made you angry. But reflection is a reflex. Somebody hits you, immediately hit back. Reflection is tit for tat. You did it to me, I'm doing it to you. These are important because you need to understand, we need to, not just you, but we need to understand the way that we express our anger. Remember, if you don't correctly identify the problem, you can't solve it. So now as we go through these, think about how you express anger most often, because next week we're going to talk about how to deal with that and how to express it in ways that it's not quite as damaging, and how to deal with it internally as well as externally. Locus or locality. How do you implode or do you explode? Internalization versus externalization. When you get angry, do you get quiet and sullen? Do you go into yourself? So implode is an internal explosion. Do you seethe? That's a great word for that. You sit inside and you steam like a pot of water. Just a little bit, just coming out like a hiss. But if you're an externalizer, when you get angry, everybody knows you're angry. They can hear you. It's easy. Do you implode or explode? Internalized anger does not mean self-blame, but rather that one's anger is stuffed within and hidden from the awareness of others. You hide your anger. Externalized anger is the expression of anger outside of self. So which one are you? Are you a reflector? You tit for tat? Are you a deflector? You take your anger out on somebody else who can't get back at you. Do you internalize? Do you see? You keep it inside. That causes physical illnesses. Or do you externalize? Do you blow up at people? Reaction. Reaction. How do you behave when you're angry? The two ends of the spectrum, resistance versus retaliation. Improvised. The resistance is the improvised explosive device. You pay back the offender in kind, tit for tat. That's going to come up over and over again. But retaliation can be passive aggressive, the stealth bomber. A rigidly defensive stance demonstrated by procrastination, disengagement, non-compliance, defiance, and the like. I'm sorry, I got those backwards. Resistance is the passive aggressive, and we'll see that come up again. Resistance, passive aggressive. Your boss tells you to do something. He tells you to have it done by 5. You get it to him by 5:01. That's passive aggressive. He doesn't even know that you're getting back at him. Retaliation and passive aggressive is a form of retaliation. Retaliation is the tit for tat. He yells at me, I yell back. Some people say I give as good as I get, or I get as good as I give. I can dish it and I can take it. That's retaliation. How do you behave when you become angry? Do you retaliate or do you resist? Do you become passive aggressive? You get them back and they don't even know they've been gotten back. There's a modality. Do they hear you when you scream? Are you verbal or nonverbal when you're angry? Verbal anger is easy. Angry speech may include statements of blame, possibly interspersed with cuss words and profanities or swears or expletives that may not add meaning, yet evidence the level of the emotion. Are you somebody who blows up and cusses everybody out? It'll include various combinations of content, and acoustics are possible. That means you can go from real quiet to real loud. You can get noisy. You heap curses upon the target of your anger, whereas others may resort to a relatively soft-spoken sarcasm. Your verbal anger can be critical. It can be sarcastic. You don't get loud and bombastic. Instead, you silently send missiles, stealth bomber. You silently become sarcastic. They ask you a question, you go to the one-word answers. How you feeling? Fine. Anything wrong? No. You can also be nonverbal. Nonverbal is a communication method, a way of communicating anger that takes place largely through visual motor channels. It may be displayed in the face and may be accompanied by other types of body language, such as hand gestures, posture, gait. It can be physical, striking, pushing, kicking. The physical expression of anger is often dreaded because of its potential for violence. Nonverbal angry people, I remember as a child hearing it was the ones that were quiet that you had to worry about. The ones that were quiet, as long as somebody was noisy and screaming, you knew where they were. You knew what they were doing. But when they became nonverbal, when they got silent, that's when they got deadly. Somebody who is nonverbal in their anger, if you're walking together, they may speed up or they may slow and lag behind. They may push, they may kick, they may throw certain finger signs at you to let you know that they're not happy. So again, how do you express your anger? Do you see yourself in any of these descriptions? Because next week we're going to deal with how to deal with that. Impulsivity, is your anger controlled? Do you think before you act when you're angry? If you have controlled anger, it's an attempt to keep anger within manageable limits by thinking about the causes and the consequences of its expression, taking others' perspectives, brainstorming for alternatives. Controlled people who exercise controlled anger, are the ones who sit down and think about it. They may ask themselves, why are they really angry? What was the disrespect that they perceived? Because remember, emotions are perceived. It's a response to a perception, a perceived disrespect. So a controlled individual will ask themselves some questions before they go crazy. They'll ask, why am I offended? Did they intend to offend me? Is there another way that I can look at this thing? Uncontrolled is aggression that is grossly out of proportion to the trigger. This aggression need not be physical and may include the use of swears, curses, and other verbalizations that also demonstrate a loss of control. Uncontrolled, angry people rage. They rage. And if they don't attack you, they may attack things. The uncontrolled, angry person is the one who punches holes in the doors and the walls, the one who tears things up, kicks things. All of that is uncontrolled. They don't think before they act, and they generally have a lot of cleaning up to do afterwards. Then your anger should have a objective. If you're angry and you feel that you've been disrespected, in the expression, were you making an effort to restore or to punish? That's the question that you have to ask. My desired outcome for the expression of my anger. Reparation, getting over it by accepting an apology, return of what was lost, repair of damage. Restorative means we're going to work this thing out. Restorative means that I'm going to accept your apology and I'm going to calm down. I'm going to forgive whether you apologize or not. But my goal, even in the expression of my anger, is to somehow save the relationship or reestablish the relationship. But punitive people, there's no getting over it. Punitive people want to punish the person that has angered them, and no apology, no effort at reparation, no way of trying to calm them down after they've been offended. There is nothing that will work with somebody who has punitive anger. You remember the Tyler Perry movie Acrimony? Acrimony is the best description of punitive anger. Taraji P. Henson's character felt that she had been disrespected and dishonored when she found out that the man who finally made it big, whom she divorced, who came back and gave her money after he made it big, saying that he wanted to thank her for how she supported him, she felt that she was disrespected by him marrying somebody else and giving another woman the life that they had talked about having together. So as a result, she makes every effort to make his life miserable, ultimately trying to kill him and ending up getting killed in the process. You want to see punitive anger? That's a good movie. That is an exact representation. And the bad thing about punitive anger is rather than damaging someone else, you can end up doing more damage to yourself. Now, as we go through this is going a lot quicker than I thought it would. As we go through this, there are 10 common types of anger. And remember, I said tonight is all about definitions. Tonight is all about understanding what it is that you're feeling and how you're expressing it so that you can begin to engage with it internally and engage with it externally. You can begin to recognize your own patterns, your own habits, your own ways of doing things, and understand if it's damaging, it's time to stop it. It's time to begin to examine this thing. If you see yourself in anything that I'm saying, you can begin to do the research yourself to figure out how to help yourself, especially if you know already that your anger is that kind of explosive, damaging anger. There are more than 10 types of anger. These 10 are the most common when people are asked to describe and talk about their anger. So again, anger is neither good nor bad. It's an emotion. It is completely neutral. It's how you handle it, how you express it, that is the negative or the positive. The first type of anger is called assertive anger. The person who is an assertive anger person, it's the most constructive type of anger expression. If this is your type of anger, you use feelings of frustration or rage as a catalyst for positive change. Rather than avoiding confrontation, internalizing anger, or resorting to verbal insults and physical outbursts, you express your anger in ways that create change in the world around you without causing distress and destruction. This is where you want to get to. Assertive is the goal. Assertive is the kind of anger that we should all have as our goal because it's the anger that serves you. It's the anger that benefits you. It's the anger that seeks out a conversation, seeks out other perspectives, seeks out information, and says, now that I've been disrespected, now that I've been hurt, now that I'm frustrated, how do I best handle this so that this becomes a positive experience and not, it becomes an asset and not a liability. Assertive anger is the anger that serves you and that serves you best because you bring about positive change. You engage, you don't draw away. Behavioral anger is anger that is expressed physically, and it's usually aggressive. If you've experienced this type of anger, you may feel so overwhelmed by your emotions that you lash out at the object of your rage. You can feel, have you ever had a wave of emotion so intense you didn't know how to handle it? That's what this is talking about. You've got an emotion so intense that you don't know what to do with it. So you lash out at somebody, either the person that caused the emotion or at somebody who had nothing to do with it. You lash out at the object of your rage. This might involve physically attacking someone or breaking or throwing things. Remember, we talked about that a few minutes ago. This type of anger can be highly unpredictable and often has negative legal and interpersonal consequences. Think about that scene from Waiting to Exhale. I love referencing that scene. Sister girl gets mad. She finds out that her husband is cheating. And not only is he cheating, he's hidden his assets, thinking that that when he declares he wants a divorce, she won't be able to get any money from him. So she fixes him. She goes to his closet. She pulls out all of those beautiful, expensive suits. She goes down to his expensive convertible car. She throws all the suits and the shoes into the expensive convertible car. Then she pours gasoline all over said clothes and shoes and lights a cigarette and extinguishes the match in the gasoline that the clothes are soaked in. And she sets everything on fire. That's behavioral anger. And it has negative, most often negative consequences that can be legal at the far end of the spectrum. This is an anger you want to stay away from. You want to stay away from behavioral anger. Type 3, chronic anger. And let me change the screen. Chronic anger is habitual, prolonged irritation. It's an ongoing, generalized resentment of other people, frustration with certain circumstances, and anger towards oneself. It's characterized by, as I said, habitual irritation. The prolonged nature of this type of anger can have profoundly adverse effects on one's health and well-being. Chronic, have you ever met somebody who's just mad? They are just, and they're mad, they stay mad, their main setting is mad, and they just go from mad to madder to more mad. This is the kind of anger that causes internal organ damage. This is the kind of anger that causes upset stomachs. This is the kind of anger that can also cause cancer. It can jack up your pancreas. This is that the Bible talks about that root of bitterness. This is part of that anger. And it's prolonged. It hits to a point where you're just mad at the world and you wake up angry and get worse. Now, you know, I like movies. You're going to get a lot of movie references tonight. In the movie The Wiz, there's a character named Eveline, and she is the sister to the wicked witch that Dorothy kills. Eveline's theme song is "Don't Nobody Bring Me No Bad News." And in the word, she says, I wake up already a little bit tiff and I'm wiring up my fuse. So don't nobody bring me no bad news. That's chronic anger. Then there is judgmental anger. Judgmental anger is a response to a perceived injustice. We sometimes call this righteous indignation. Righteous indignation. I have a right to be angry because you have done something that is just totally wrong. It is a reaction to a perceived injustice or someone else's shortcoming. Although judgmental anger assumes a morally superior stance of justified fury, It may alienate potential allies by invalidating their difference of opinion. Look at what this does. You can alienate people because in your judgmental anger, you invalidate their opinions. You invalidate their thoughts. When they bring an idea to the table and you don't think it's a good enough idea, you stand in judgment, morally superior to what that person is thinking or saying. You end up closing the circle of friends. And I don't know of anybody who has a huge circle, but you do want to have a circle. And being judgmentally angry can cause you to lose your circle. Have you lost any friends because they just can't deal with the fact that you become hypercritical when you don't like their idea? You become hypercritical when you don't like what they've done. That's judgmental anger. It does not serve you. Chronic anger does not serve you. Here's one that was interesting to me. It's overwhelmed anger. Overwhelmed. I never connected being overwhelmed to anger, but a sense that situations are out of our control. Overwhelmed. It is an uncontrolled type of anger. It usually occurs when we feel that a situation or circumstances are beyond our control, resulting in feelings of hopelessness and frustration. This type of anger is common when we've taken on too much responsibility or unexpected life events have overthrown our usual capacity to cope with stress. The overwhelmed individual is that one who, like myself, sometimes finds it difficult to say no. And then because we've said yes to so many projects, so much stuff going on, now we don't know what to do. And in our sense of being overwhelmed, we lash out. We blow up at someone for no reason. And that's because we feel we've got so much on our plate. We are buried under the weight of what we've said yes to. So we feel that things are out of our control. The other side of that coin is life happens. Life happens. You're going along, everything is cool. You've just paid the last payment on your car, and you're excited that you're going to have 2 or 3 years with no car note, and boom, you get hit by an 18-wheeler. Life happens. And now you have no car. And now, yes, if you got hit and hurt, that's not a good example, because you get hit by an 18-wheeler, you might get some good money. Somebody comes along without insurance and they hit your car. And because you've made the last payment, you put liability on it and took off the comprehensive. So now you out of car, the person who hit you has no insurance, and now you can be overwhelmed with just life's experiences. And in that overwhelmed, you will lash out at somebody. Passive aggressive. This is my personal favorite because I know it real, real well. Passive aggressive is an avoidant type of anger. If this is your usual mode of anger expression, you likely try to avoid all forms of confrontation. All forms of confrontation, and may deny or repress any feelings of frustration or fury you are experiencing. Passive aggressive anger may be expressed verbally as sarcasm, pointed silence, or veiled mockery. It's verbal, but there's also some action stuff to passive aggressive. Sometimes people who express anger passively are not even aware that their actions are perceived as aggressive. This can have dire personal and professional outcomes. Passive aggressive people tend to procrastinate because it's a way of getting even. I know this firsthand. Passive aggressive people. My favorite example for this, passive aggressive people, and I've owned that for myself, is the person who knows that something that you like a great deal is on sale, and they wait until after the sale is ended to tell you about it. Does that describe anybody? I feel like saying, put something in the chat if you've been there with me. Raise your hand. Passive aggressive people, this is a form of anger. It is an avoidant form of anger. You're not being assertive. You're not coming to the person and saying, hey, I felt offended when you did this. I felt betrayed when you did that. I was frustrated when this happened. Passive aggressive people are stealth bombers. They get you back, and they're happy knowing that they've gotten you back, and you may not even know that you've been hit. You don't even know that you've been gotten back, but they're inside themselves congratulating themselves because they got you back. So where my passive aggressives at? Next week, we're going to figure out a way to deal with these things and to manage these things. And not only to manage them in ourselves, but to manage them as we deal with them from other people. Because remember, there is internal and external expression of anger. We can be passive aggressive against ourselves. We can sabotage ourselves. So next week, we'll talk about how do we deal with all of this? How do we manage these types of anger? How do we get them, if there's any way possible, get them to a place of service? Retaliatory anger. It is motivated by a perceived wrong. Remember, I have used the word perception over and over and over. It is a perceived disrespect. Anger doesn't take into consideration the other person's intentions. Anger takes into consideration how I feel in the moment. So retaliatory anger is usually an instinctual response to being confronted or attacked by someone or something. It's one of the most common types of anger, and it is motivated by revenge for a perceived wrong. This is vengeful anger. Retaliatory anger can also be deliberate and purposeful. Think acrimony. It often aims to intimidate other people by asserting control over a situation or an outcome, yet may only serve to escalate tensions. Retaliatory anger can only cause a ticking time bomb to explode. It only makes things worse. When you perceive that you've been wrong and you don't talk to the individual about it to get their perspective, but instead you decide to blow up and get physical. And remember, a lot of anger's expressions can have legal ramifications. You lose family members. You do the wrong thing, you could get locked up. Self-abusive. This is one that was interesting to me as well. You've heard the word shame. Self-abusive anger is shame-based anger. If you've been feeling hopeless, unworthy, humiliated, or ashamed, you might internalize those feelings and express anger as negative self-talk. Self-harm. Negative self-talk, self-harm, substance use, or an eating disorder behavior. Either you're binging and throwing up, you can become anorexic, you can become bulimic, you can begin to gorge and binge. Self-abusive anger is anger turned inside. And it's that anger that you speak to yourself, calling yourself names. I'm dumb. I'm stupid. I don't know how I thought that person could ever love me. I don't know why I trusted them. Everybody else thought that they were crazy. I don't know why I didn't see that they were crazy. Something must be wrong with me. Now, tonight I have not done a whole lot of spiritual talk, but I'm going to jump spiritual for 1 minute. Those voices come from the pit of not heaven. They come from the pit of Hades, from hell. Those voices, you need to and deal with those voices. We'll talk next week about how to manage them, but self-talk can be very, very dangerous. So if you are a self-abusive person, we've got to work on that. And I would recommend, if you're really self-abusive, to go seek counseling, because you need more help than what we can give you. I can give you some management techniques. I can give you some things to think about, but you may have some other stuff going on deep-seated. Remember, I talked last week about a root of bitterness. Roots of bitterness yield ugly blossoms.
Dr. K?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I jump in?
You sure can.
Hold on. Hey, guys. Dr. K, one thing about what you're speaking about right now, the self-talk, self-hate, these things that come from shame, a lot of times, I want to encourage anyone that may be suffering from guilt and shame. One thing that has been powerful, hold on, my daughter knocked down the light, it fell on me. I'm sorry, guys. hold on one second, Dr. K. We got an emergency.
Okay, I imagine you'll be back in a few minutes.
I'm back. We fixed
Okay.
it. Well, the light's not really fixed, but we're working it out. Is that even if they can share the details of that shame with a stranger, it has been proven that when you get it out, even if it's something that they're completely embarrassed by, there is some power in when you share it. It actually is like removing it out of your system. The memory may not go away, but it's almost like it doesn't have the power that it once had.
Right.
And a lot of people say, I met a lot, especially men who say, I don't understand the point of counseling or speaking to a stranger if what is done is done. But it has been proven that when you can articulate the details of what you did or what someone else did, it removes the power that we've given it in our mind. It's almost like it's almost like having the ingredients to a recipe, and when you share it, it's like scooping all of that one ingredient out of the recipe. Let's say you put spoiled milk into cake. To us, it's impossible to remove the milk once it's been poured in. So that's what we're telling ourselves. Why go talk to a counselor if the milk has already been added? I can't remove it now. Why cry over spilled milk? But that's the power of the Holy Spirit to understand how in the world did sharing this actually begin my healing journey for real. And I'm not going by what I read. I've lived this myself. I held something in for 20 years. And I shared it with a couple people, but once I shared it with a particular person, it was almost like, I don't even know the analogy for it. It's almost like it just shriveled up, Dr. K. It was just like,
as you were talking, I got an analogy.
Okay.
It's like taking the stinger out once you've been stung by a bee. The bee is going on. It's doing its thing. But as long as that stinger is in there, you're subject to pain and infection. And once you get that stinger out, then you can begin to heal. So in having that conversation, and that's one of the management techniques we were going to talk about next week, but I can thank you for coming in, because this is not a good place to leave somebody. This is one, if they're dealing with that negative self-talk,
right,
you need to address that as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Dr. K, I love that analogy. And Dr. K, if you need an extra week, because this is so important, you've shared a lot tonight. I don't know how much more they can digest tonight.
There are two more types.
Because I feel led right where we are right here. The stinger inside. Anybody watching this, first of all, whoever's still with us right now is really like, they're in. This is not a coincidence. This is divine. We have people who are serious about healing on this session with us right now. And whoever catches the replay, I know it's not by mistake. And it's not all women. It's not all women. We have men watching this. We have somebody watching this who is tired of damaging people they love because they don't mean to hurt them.
Right.
And I know, I feel this in my spirit. Somebody watching this, we know you've caused damage. We know you have caused hurt. We know you've probably been abusive. Stop trying to figure this out on your own and take this information as a starting point.
Yes.
A starting point.
Yes.
Dr. K, when we talk about the stinger
Mhm.
from a bee could be abuse from their past. The stinger could be them being victimized, or them also victimizing someone else.
Can I jump in on the abuse?
Yes, yes.
What I had to learn in
Is
my
that
marriage.
you, Dr. K?
What, me? Yes.
I hear some noise in the background.
That I have my phone just dinged. Do
Okay.
you hear other noises? Because otherwise my house is quiet.
Hold on.
Maybe somebody else has.
Dr.
Did
K,
you? Uh-huh.
it's on your end, but I don't know why it's coming in like that.
I don't know what it is. I'm in a quiet house.
Do you have more than one device?
No, I turned off the phone.
Okay. So what were you about to say about that, Dr. K?
Did it just start? Well, okay. What I was going to say is that abuse, we need to remember that abuse is not only physical. We hear so much about domestic violence and it being physical attack, but abuse can be emotional, it can be verbal, and those forms of abuse, it can be financial. A woman who is in a relationship with someone who holds the purse strings and she can't get the money that she needs to do whatever it is she needs to do. She doesn't know how to pay the bills, how to handle any of she's financially tied to this individual. There's financial abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse. I found out in my marriage, because I had never heard of verbal abuse, that I was being verbally abused by watching the TV show Designing Women. They had an episode on abuse. Now, my ex never physically hurt me. I think that I had a line drawn there because I knew about physical abuse. So that was one where he knew where I stood on that, but he was verbally abusive. And I didn't understand the concept of verbal abuse until I watched an episode of Designing Women. One of the main characters was being abused, and I saw the process. And I recognized the process. Something would happen, he would blow up, she'd break down in tears, and then rather than apologize, he would buy her a trinket. And she was like, well, yeah, he broke, yeah, he twisted my arm, but I got this great ring. you know, he blacked my eye, but I got this beautiful pair of expensive shoes. And I realized that is exactly what was going on in my relationship.
Oh,
Yep, something would happen, trigger, there'd be a blow up, and then by the weekend is okay, Cass, let's go shopping.
you know, I really hope that Erica, you bring up an amazing point. I really hope that Erica has enough time to really help people to understand if they're being abused, why is it that they feel they can't leave, they feel attached, they feel they still love, and it's just confusing because there's some chemical things that happen in the brain.
Yep.
And so I try not to judge people because I've also been in a similar situation where it was verbal and mental and psychological abuse in the past. And you're like, if this is not healthy, why am I still accepting the calls? And so you get really confused at that point because you start looking at yourself as low self-esteem and crazy.
Right.
And so, Dr. K, I don't want to take this up. I just want to reiterate, if someone listening right now knows there is something that they have not addressed or shared with anyone, and they've been trying to live with that stinger in their flesh, their arm, a conversation is a good starting point to remove that stinger. It doesn't even have to be with the person who you committed the crime or they committed to you or whatever. It can be a stranger. It can be a stranger. That's the first step. That's the first. But Dr. K, I'm going to turn it over to you for those last two because it's almost 9:30, and then we can pick up next Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And if anyone's watching, if they could share this out, you're helping a family. They don't know who's watching this in private. They don't know what people are going through in their house. So thank you so much for sharing.
I want to hang on that point for one more example. The way that you take the power out of a secret is to tell the secret. That's how you destroy the power, and that's taking that stinger out. You destroy the secret has power as long as it is a secret. When it stops being a secret, when you tell it, it no longer has power.
What is it that happens? Do you know why that's so transformative? I mean, maybe we need to research it, but what is it about a secret being told that completely can catapult somebody so many years ahead in their healing?
It's this, they're imprisoned. And when you're imprisoned, you can only go so far. You have the space in your prison. Telling that secret opens the prison doors. It literally, it's unlocked. That secret is a lock. And when you tell it, you literally, you unlock it. So you're now free to roam. You're now free to move. You're free to expand. But as long as you're held in check, that secret controls your behavior.
But Dr. K, if someone has a secret, okay, and I just feel this in my spirit, I just feel, I know we haven't gotten to the two things, maybe they can type them in the chat box or whatever, but with the secret, someone watching this who has a secret or something they have not shared, shame or whatever, are you saying that sharing is not going to make it go away? Sharing it doesn't necessarily take the memory away. How is sharing it unlocking the door then? Are you saying that because they've built up the courage to share it, now they're no longer defined by it?
Yes, that it's no longer circumscribing them. If you've got a secret that you don't want to get
That sound is back. That sound came back.
Okay, I started to lean back. I'll lean in. If you've got a secret, it's going to control your behavior. You're not going to talk to certain people because you don't want them to know your secret. You're going to be very guarded. You're not able to be authentic when you've got a secret because you're going to govern your words. You're going to be guarded. And when you tell that secret, the guard can go away. You no longer have to be guarded because now it's like, okay, well, it's out in the open. If anybody finds out, what can happen? Plus, you find out that once that secret is exposed, the things that you had feared, they don't happen. Let me give you a classic example. It's my favorite example. David Letterman received a letter in the mail from someone who said he wanted to blackmail him because he knew that David Letterman, who was married, was having an affair with one of his staffers.
Okay.
Got the letter. David Letterman, after he got the letter and took it to the police, got on national TV on his night show and announced the affair. Said that he was in counseling with his wife, had ended it, and was moving forward. So before the blackmailer could bring it out into the open and do damage, David Letterman took the secret. He unmasked the secret. And his marriage is still fine. He didn't lose his TV show. He retired, a very wealthy man, very rich man, because he exposed the secret that somebody wanted to use to damage him. That person thought he could control David's behavior with the secret.
Wow.
He said, no, I can break free. I will expose the secret. And the blackmailer went to jail.
Wow.
So the things that we fear, that's the problem, is once the secret is spoken, we find out that those fears were unfounded.
Yeah. And I mean, some people, if someone has committed a crime, someone could be like, once I share this, I may lose my marriage. Once I share this, I may lose a relationship or whatever. Guess what? You're still living in prison though by not sharing it. So what's your advice?
You're in a greater prison because that prison that you're in is imprisoning your mind and your spirit. You can be in prison and get a law degree like this TV show For Life. You can be in prison, and plenty of people have come out of prison into very, very successful lives. So the prison wasn't a prison, it was an opportunity. But right. You can be walking around and be imprisoned. And there are people who are in prison who are more free than those who are walking around.
Right.
That secret puts you into a mental prison, an emotional prison. It causes you to stagnate, and it causes you not to be your authentic self. You
And
can't
people,
show up fully because you might blurt out the secret.
exactly. And people who have experienced things in childhood, they experimented sexually, they've done a lot of things that may be seen as taboo, then they question identity, they question this, or maybe a family member did this, that, and it's never talked about.
Right.
They don't realize how not acknowledging it and sharing those thoughts that they still have from time to time with someone is causing them, stop, Bryson, is causing them to, I have my children watching this because I felt like it was very important for them to watch this tonight. And as you can see, we got a few distractions, but I know some seeds being planted. So that's what's most important.
That's most important.
Is that, you know, and that if there's any secrets, we can talk about them, right? And so it's very important that people realize that even though it happened as a child, or them and family members, or at friends' houses, or grandma's house, or uncle's house, they're like, what's the point in sharing it now? I was 5, I was 8, I was 11, I was 15. Guess what? If you can't share it, it's holding some type of power.
Yes. And that's it. It is holding some kind of power because you can't express it. And it triggers some bad behaviors. And people
That
are
might be
wondering,
why you're so frustrated.
There you go. Why can't I get beyond this? Why do I keep doing this? Why does this keep happening to me? Well, this anchor, and that's literally what it is. That's a great, thank you, Lord. Great example. It's an anchor. And an anchor will only allow a boat to go so far. So once you express it, you pull the anchor up, and now your boat is able to move freely. And it does make a difference. Even if it happened when you were 4, 5, 6 years old, it is impacting you now if you can't talk about it. And if you've never talked about it, oh my God, you think you've buried it away. All you've done is you've taken that stinger and allowed pus to develop around it and allowed it to get infected.
And you can allow that skin to close up over it.
Yep.
And now you've forgotten it's in there. But every time somebody bumps against your arm, you wonder why you lashing out at your husband. You wonder why you lashing out at your kids, why you lashing out at your mom, your auntie, and they're saying they always doing this. You know what? If that's who they are, that does not mean you would lash out if it wasn't something within you that was still tender. And that's why we can't judge ourselves if the lashing out. I used to lash out so much. I had so much inner work to do. I had so many things to go back and address from childhood and my past. I had forgiveness. I had to look even at choices I made that I was upset with myself about. And now when I tell you, Dr. K, I'm not perfect, but I'm telling you the majority of all those triggers, it would be like somebody blowing dust. When I promise you, Dr. K, because when you have some of those hard conversations with yourself and other people and you take those stingers out, imagine somebody having 20 stingers, a stinger from 5 years old, another stinger at 7 years old, another stinger at 12, 14, another stinger from their marriage, another stinger from a betrayal, another stinger from a friend, another stinger from somebody robbing them, you know.
And all of them getting infected. It's a gross analogy, but it works. When that happens, you have this substance in there, this infected substance that is poisoning your entire system. And now you're wondering, why am I getting sick all the time? Why am I in and out of the doctor's office? They've got me on 5 medicines and my blood pressure won't come down.
And they think it's just the food. It's not just the food that you are eating. You're eating, sometimes we're eating those foods because of the stingers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you can remove the food and still have the blood pressure issue. And they're
Yep.
going, well, I've less salt, I've cut out pork, I'm not eating this, I'm not eating that. And it still won't come down, especially if you've got a situation that is just not being healed. I would start to look at emotional work, because I know that emotions are stored in the body. We talked about that the first week. Emotions are stored, emotions that are not expressed. Remember, they're neither negative or bad, but they can cause some bad results. They are expressed. Emotions are going to be expressed, and they can be expressed internally and cause damage, or externally. And they can externally cause damage, don't get it twisted. But if you don't express that emotion, whatever it is, and deal with it, it's going to become a problem. That's where that chronic anger person comes from. That's the one with the 20 or 30 stingers. And now all of those stingers are covered over, they're infected, and the infection is just oozing into the bloodstream. It's oozing into life. It has now oozed into the heart and contaminated the core of their being.
Ooh.
Work, yeah. It can get really, really ugly.
Well, guess what? On Kayleen's IGTV, we spoke about some steps they could take today. For people who have Instagram, they can go to my wall. And next week, we're going to really go into practical how-to steps, where to begin, how to honor it, how to express, how to manage some of this stuff. But right now, we are sharing with people the importance of speaking to someone. And if it is a stranger, if you cannot go to a professional counselor, you bump into somebody on the beach, at the wherever, they don't know you, you would never see them. Huh?
I heard somebody say something, it wasn't me.
Tanisha,
Yes.
wherever, they don't know you.
I think your voice is, I heard somebody say something, it wasn't me.
Yes.
Tanisha,
Yes.
There's a delay.
Tanisha, yes. Wherever, they don't know you.
I think your voice is, I heard somebody say something, it wasn't me.
Yes.
That's Tanisha.
Yes.
When Tanisha's mic is unmuted, there's a delay. It's coming out of you.
Yes. Wherever, they don't know you. Can you mute yourself, please, Tanisha?
Your voice is, I heard somebody say something, it wasn't me.
Yes.
That's Tanisha.
Yes.
When Tanisha's mic is unmuted, there's a delay.
Please mute. Okay, Dr. K.
This system is doing some interesting stuff. I have 2 more types to deal with, and I can go through them really quickly because I know.
Can you go through those really quickly? But guess what? I believe that happened because we have people, somebody watching this is about to get a breakthrough. Like I was telling them, go share it with a stranger. If you're afraid of guilt, shame, embarrassment, tell someone who is not a part of your life, and go get in your car and leave. Start with that. That's not the end all, but that's getting the first part of that stinger out. The journaling, the writing the letter. We'll go through some of that next week. But Dr. K, I'm going to just turn it back over to you.
Let me recommend that this is one of those places where ministers and churches can come up. Ask some friends if they know, if you have friends who go to church and they really love their pastor and they talk about their pastor in good, positive terms, you could ask to meet with that pastor. Pastors know that they are confidants and they are not allowed to discuss what is discussed with them, and they will usually do their first couple of meetings with really no charge. They understand that the flock needs help. So I can recommend that you talk to some ministers, pastors, check in with some friends on who do they know that is a good confidant. But yes, you do need to share it. The 9th type of anger is verbal anger. And let me find, here we go. Verbal anger, and we all know what that is: furious shouting, threats, ridicule, sarcasm, often seen as less dangerous than behavioral anger, but it can be a form of emotional and psychological abuse that deeply hurts the target of one's anger. Verbal anger is designed to destroy somebody's character, destroy somebody's emotions, destroy somebody's self-view, their self-esteem. Verbal abuse may be expressed as furious shouting, threats, ridicule, sarcasm, intense blaming, or criticism. If you've lashed out at someone verbally, it's common to feel ashamed, apologetic, and regretful afterwards. I used to describe myself as somebody who would give the right information in the wrong way. I can tell somebody that they need to adjust whatever, and I can say it like really, really angry and add a couple of extra words to it. Or I can say, hey, we need to, check this little area out. I would tell people I'd say the right thing the wrong way, destroyed a lot of relationships that way. Working on that. The last one is volatile. Volatile anger is rage. It seems to come up out of nowhere. If this is your type of anger, you are very quick to get upset about perceived annoyances. Remember, there's that word perceived again, both big and small. Once you've impulsively expressed your anger, you often calm down just as quickly. So you flare up and you flare down. Unfortunately, volatile anger can be incredibly destructive, as those around you may feel they need to walk on eggshells for fear of triggering your rage. I lived in a house like that. If left unchecked, volatile anger may eventually lead to violent outbursts. Volatile anger is people don't know which way you're going to respond because they don't know what the trigger is. One day you're cool with spilt milk, the next day you're breaking doors. So those are the last two. We've gone through the 10 most common types of anger and the way that they're expressed. Next week, we'll go through how to deal with this, how to express them, how do you manage these things. And we'll also take a look at anger in the Bible and what the Bible has to say about anger. We are going to have to go biblical at some point. That's my foundational document. Tonight was about definitions. To that person who is dealing with that self-loathing talk, please speak to somebody. It's never too late. It's never too late. I heard a story about a woman who had an incident that happened when she was 4 years old that involved her head getting stuck in between a couple of slats on the railing on the banister in her home. And her father came with a saw to cut the banisters, and she freaked out thinking he was going to cut her head off. Now, she was 4 years old. She's using 4-year-old logic. That event affected her up into her 70s. She had 4 failed marriages, and they all stemmed from her distrust of men because of what happened when she was 4. So it's never too late to deal with it. And it will change your life for the better when you do.
And Dr. Kate, we are speaking from experience, guys.
Oh yeah, man. Yes.
This session is free. It's live on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to enter an email to watch this. You're really not even a member of the group to watch it because we've shared it outside of the group. Because we know how important this is. This session on honoring your emotions and helping you get the stinger out, trust me, I've done it. I tortured myself. I mentally tortured myself by holding things in. And I could not figure out, how is this connected to me lashing out to someone else? I told myself, no, I'm lashing out because this person disrespected me. No. Mm-mm. You have to heal from other things, because that same person can say that same thing to me and disrespect me. My response is so different today.
Yeah.
Because I know how to enforce a healthy boundary. I know I'm responsible for who I share my life with. I know I'm responsible for the environments that I place myself in. But when you have not healed, when you have not taken the stinger out, you're so used to living with pain and self-sabotage and anger and all this other stuff towards yourself that it's easy to lash out to someone else. But I want you to forgive yourself.
Yes.
I want people to realize that who they were then is not who they are now. The decisions you made then was based off the environment that you were in. It was based off where your mind was at that time. It was
Mhm.
based off with the pain that you may have already been dealing with, the confusion you may have been dealing with, the lack of support, the lack of love, the lack feeling abandoned, feeling ashamed, feeling rejected, whatever you were feeling. Maybe that's why you made that decision. Maybe that's
Mm.
why you held it in. Maybe you were afraid, but today is a new day. And I do not want you to continue to hold this in. You don't have to tell us your business, but I want you to forgive yourself. I want you to write it down. I want you to write a letter to whoever did this to you or whoever you did something to. I want you to write a raw letter and start getting it out. That's how you start to put ointment, Holy Spirit ointment around the pain instead of alcohol, drugs, pornography, whatever, eating addictions, all this stuff. Face it, you are strong. You are not watching this by accident. You are not watching this by circling. This is a free session that me and Dr. K have walked bridges before. We are doing this to help. We don't need your email to grow our database for you to go free yourself tonight. Go
Mm.
free yourself because you have a purpose on this earth, okay?
Yes.
So you beating yourself up, sabotaging yourself,
Mm.
regretting what you did or regret what someone did to you, or maybe they passed away or all this stuff. You know what? Today is a new day. Today is a new day. You can step into the light. Those shadows may have been real, but you can step into the light. You can forgive yourself. You can write a raw letter and honor all your. I wrote a letter so long, Dr. K, it was 7 pages front and back. I cried
Wow.
so many tears writing that letter.
Mm.
I used profanity writing that letter. I almost tore the pages up writing that letter. If that person was right there, they would have been mutilated. I had so much
Mm.
anger come up out of me. It was horrible. I could not believe the amount of
Anger.
pain and
Yeah.
anger and abandonment, and you weren't there for me, and I went through this without you, and I went through that because you had left me, and this and that. I had so much stuff stored in me, Dr. K. By the time I got to the last line, I could barely hold the pen. I had
Wow.
no energy left. This is not what we read about. This is what we have lived.
Emotional expression is it takes a lot of energy. I as I was going through my divorce, it was yeah. And the funny thing was that because I had held in so many different emotions and so much that any expression of emotion tired me out. So if I heard a good joke and I laughed, went to a a comic show, or watched a good movie, I would laugh and then sleep for 3 hours. If I had a long conversation, it would any expression of emotion, it because they had been just the releasing of them. It's like you ever let the air out of a balloon? You're holding the balloon and you're letting the air sip out, but then you let go of the balloon and it just explodes out. It was
Right.
that rush was very oh man, I know exactly. Yeah, you just wore out afterwards. I
You
know
are.
you just wore out. And it was that way for a while and then as I got used to dealing with the emotions, identifying them and working through them and examining, is this a good, how does this serve me? What can I do with this? Then it got to be where, okay, I could laugh and not go to sleep. I could cry and not go to sleep. I could have a good conversation and I could be authentic. That was the thing that was the greatest is, okay, I'm not worried about something blurting out. I can be Cassandra and I can bring Cassandra to the table. And then it was, okay, if they like Cassandra, great. If they don't like Cassandra, Cassandra's not for everybody. Everybody's not for Cassandra. And I can
Right.
still be Cassandra. And that did not have to diminish them. They could still be who
Yeah.
they
Yeah. Dr. K, we're going to get more into this next week, but some people's reality is they do have family and friends that are judging them, or they don't want to cause a rift in their family, so they don't want to go and bring it up with their family. We're not saying you have to talk to your family about it.
Right.
So it's going to be some stuff, some situations where you can't go back to those people, but you can still acknowledge it with someone. And so, Dr. K, did you already go through the last two?
There was the volatile and the volatile, excuse me, and the verbal.
Okay, can you stop the screen share just so I can make sure it's just me and you on the screen?
It's just me and you.
Okay. Dr. K, that PowerPoint, is it in a PDF format?
It can be. It's still in a PowerPoint format, but I can PDF it.
Okay, I think that if you want, whatever you're willing to share with the community, Tanisha can upload into When Women Heal files. If someone wants to go to Google and Google an emotion word wheel, they can print that out. I highly suggest it. I'm going to print another one out. I remember printing it out and taking it to my daughter's classroom. She ended up printing it for all the children. I will be printing it out again and putting it on the refrigerator. Because what it does is it gives power to every family member to use a word and know that their emotions matter. It's a visual reminder that whatever you're feeling, here are some words to express that. And so I just want to thank you for doing a phenomenal job. And I want to thank everyone who stayed with us this long. Tanisha, are there any comments on Facebook that Dr. K and I can't see? If anyone has questions at this time inside of the When Women Heal Facebook group, please type it in. Can you see When Women?
I see a question that you put in, Tiara. How can you be passive aggressive towards yourself?
Yeah.
And that's a really good question. You can be passive aggressive towards yourself by sabotage. You get an opportunity you get the interview of your life, the job, the dream job, and you oversleep. You forget to set the alarm. You don't have clean clothes. You show up late intentionally, knowing there's traffic, and you leave 10 minutes later than you planned because you decided to make a phone call. You decided to look for a sheet of paper. You didn't print out your resume until the last minute. Passive aggressive behavior towards self is self-sabotage. So okay, Tanisha. Tanisha said there are no questions.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. K. Thank you for that example. I just want to encourage people to know that they matter. Their life matters. They can change their life. We can change our responses. But guess what? Stop blaming yourself for patterns you have when you know there's some stingers in there that you have not talked about.
Haven't pulled out.
We gotta start there, sweetie. So I love you guys. Dr. K, phenomenal job. Can you close us out in prayer? We'll meet you back here Monday at 8:30 p.m.
Let's pray. Father God, thank you for how you love us. And thank you, Father, that you don't want any person to remain in the dark, that everybody can come to the light. Everybody can come to you. Thank you, Lord, for the ability to communicate. Thank you for words. And thank you, Lord, for the gift of emotions. Thank you that we are able to express our feelings and communicate and relate to one another. Father, right now, I pray for the individual that we've been talking to. I pray, dear God, for that sister, for that brother, for that man, that woman, that boy or that girl that is dealing with that secret that is causing them to speak negatively to themselves and to do things that sabotage the world around them. They sabotage their relationships. They sabotage their own life. They destroy their own opportunities, and they don't understand the core of it. Father, I pray right now, through the power of Holy Spirit, that you would give them the courage to deal with that secret, to deal with the truth. Father, your word says that your word is truth, but that truth is revealed. reveal to them the truth of that circumstance, that situation that happened so long ago that they buried it somewhere in the recesses of their mind. Lord, trigger it, cause it to come forward. Send them help, Lord, if they don't go and get it on their own. Lord, intentionally cause an encounter so that they'll meet somebody to whom they can express this thing and take the stinger out of their own body. And some have multiple stingers, Lord. There's going to be some work. I pray now that tonight is the first step on their journey towards healing. I pray that tonight is the first step on their journey to wholeness, that in hearing these definitions, it has caused them to recognize some patterns in their own lives, some habits, some ways of responding, and that because they recognize it, they now will seek help. They now will go after more information. They now will begin to examine themselves. And Holy Spirit, don't leave them alone. Give them the sense of your wonderful presence. Speak into their heart. Speak into their spirit and comfort them and console them in the midst of this thing, Father. Lord, we don't take it for granted, this privilege and this platform that we have. I pray your blessing over Tierra, and I thank you for connecting us and giving me the opportunity that you've given me. You know how I love to research, and then you know how I love to teach. And in this forum, I get to do both. Lord, for that, I am eternally grateful. Now, Lord, I pray for everybody who hears this, not only tonight, but those who catch it on the replay. God, that they would experience you, that you would cause your countenance, your joyful countenance to shine on them, and that you would give them peace, that you would do for them exceedingly abundantly above whatever they could think, ask, or imagine, and that you would do it according to your great power that is at work within them. Give them a wonderful night's rest, cause them to think about what they've heard, and bring healing and wholeness to their lives. In Jesus' name we ask these things. Amen. All righty.
Amen. Thank you so much, Dr. Kate, and thank you for your willingness to go over tonight. And we look forward to everyone joining us next Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys have a great night.